This citizenship ceremony is now open.
Thank you. Judge Anne-Marie Keynes presiding. Please be seated. Judge Keynes, the candidates assembled here have met all the requirements of the Citizenship Act. They have been lawfully admitted to Canada for permanent residence, are subject to no prohibitions. They have met the residence requirement. They have knowledge of English or French with certain exceptions, and they have knowledge of Canada and of the rights and responsibilities of Canadian citizenship. It is my pleasure to present them to you for the oath, for the public administration of the oath of Canadian citizenship.
Thank you very much. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, les jeunes filles, les garçons. C'est un jour très important pour tous, pour vos familles. Un jour significant, memorable. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your citizenship ceremony. I hope you always think of this as your Canada Day, very special on your calendars. Also, welcome to the boys and girls. We know those that are out of school are enjoying an extra bit of a break today, which is always fun on a Friday. Today we have the great benefit of having Constable Bruce Mickelson with us. And there's nothing like the red surge when our RCMP, our National Police Force, wear this beautiful red surge. It speaks of our history, of the commitment, of the challenge that the RCMP face every day, and the great service that they give us across the country. And with great thanks to Corporal Mickelson to make it a special day for you. He has served, he retired when he had 40 years of service, and they called him back, and he's been working for another 4 years already after retiring. Obviously he loves his job. Well, that's how I would interpret it. But it's quite an accomplishment to really show that commitment, because the job is difficult and dangerous. So great thanks to you for making this a special day. We also have today Jordana Ma, who's going to speak to you briefly, and she is a computer engineer, software engineer, and she also is a writer and editor on Schema magazine. And you'll find out why she's here to speak to you today, so we have that privilege. I want to thank Vincent and Helen and Daniela for getting you in quickly, so everything's ready, so you can look forward to a celebratory lunch. And today we also have one other person that's here, and that's Margaret. And we in Canada often seemed to struggle with what was really Canadian. What does Canada stand for? What's different about Canada? In Canada, 75% of the people over 18 years old do some kind of volunteer work. 75%. Schools, organizations, teams, committees, coaching, pitching in at the airport, pitching in the neighborhood, 75%. And without all that extra work that's done on behalf of all of us, we all benefit from it. Imagine what every day would be like. You just don't know the number of people who you walk by that have just made a difference at the cancer clinic, or helping out at the school, or working volunteering at the airport, in the hospitals, raising money for a disease that you've never heard of and now someone in your family has it. All those things. Margaret's a volunteer with the Vancouver Citizenship Council. Margaret's very petite. You can stand up, Margaret. And she has come to these ceremonies for many years. She is one of the people that gets here early, makes sure all the flags are neat and tidy on the chairs and everything's sort of nicely laid up and the rows are all perfect, like setting the table for a guest. If I didn't mention her, you wouldn't have a clue that she'd done this. But it's important from the Vancouver Citizenship Council's perspective that they contribute to this very special day. Now, this is a good day to become a Canadian citizen. This is Citizenship Week in Canada. There have been lots of articles in the newspapers about what that means. And it's important that you mark this day on your calendar in perpetuity because I think it's a day that you can celebrate. When we look at your files, and it's not because we're old-fashioned, it's just because of the necessity of the work, we look at every single file. We read all of the documents you send in. We learn to read scrunchy handwriting and beautiful handwriting and good printing and over-scratched out things. We're good at it. But we read every file. We want to know your story. We also want to make sure that you do meet and qualify to become a Canadian citizen. It is so important, I think, for you to know how much we respect the stories we read. We know that for every one of you, leaving your place of origin is a huge decision, a big decision. It's not a vacation you're going on, you're choosing to immigrate. And for so many of you, this means you're leaving family behind, sometimes children behind, parents. You're leaving familiar places, schools we're used to go, favorite coffee spots, parks we're used to enjoy doing things. And you make big choices. Some of you have been in refugee camps. And that's a very difficult place to be. If you've never been in one, it's important to understand too that in a refugee camp, there's no work. Very little schooling, if any. No regular shopping places. It's dangerous. People there are troubled and struggling. And they do know one thing, that more people are coming, but they never know when they're going to get out. When we see people who have been in refugee camps, they look like all of us, but they have been there for sometimes up to 14 or 16 years. When they come to Canada and they don't speak English, you would be shocked, but they absolutely, bloom, literally bloom. Their children are in school, they're trying to get their English down pat, they want to get a job, they go to different grocery stores, they do different things. They're so thrilled to be free to follow their new dream. So it's fascinating, the changes that can be made. But for each one of you, we know it's been a difficult decision, especially when you make it on behalf of your children and they don't want to leave their place of origin and you bring them with you. Few discussions, I'm sure, in households about that. That's not easy. But today is the day that marks, for each one of you as an individual, all those choices you made and your choice to choose to become a citizen. Today is the day where you get to pat yourself on the back for having made that decision. I want you to clearly understand, you're not just getting citizenship, you're becoming a Canadian citizen. Two different things. Two very different things. The country you've fallen in love with, the country you want to call your own, the country whose passport you're going to carry, the country where you're going to vote in every election, the country where you're going to be protected by our military and supported by our laws and traditions, is also the country you need to contribute to. The history of Canada is one that can't be overlooked. We like to think of ourselves as peacekeepers. Lots of people think Canadians only do peacekeeping work, and that's not true.